like find your niche,
yeah,
like the reception is like unmatched.
Yeah.
Like like people in Nashville were coming up to me, were like, "Oh, I found you on TikTok," and I was like, "Okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for it."
Yeah.
Like, and like it's weird because like unlike other forms of social media where you have to like kind of put on this facade like Instagram or such, like the more raw and real you can be, the more people are gonna eat it up.
Yeah.
So like it took me a long time to figure that out. No one wants the polished content. Nobody wants like you to like super excitable and professional. Like they want you to just be like, "Hey, this is how I do what I do," and they're like, "Oh, you're a person." Like and follow, subscribe. Like it's great. And
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Like it's a difficult thing to dive into. I think it's like
yeah, it's one of those things where like just pull out your camera and film what you're doing and then just like narrate over top of it. People love that shit, but like you don't want to think too hard about it.
Yeah,
that's good to know. I mean, I think there's been an element of like trepidation for me anytime I've ever started a new social media platform, MySpace, Facebook, Instagram. When I decided Instagram, like I'm gonna really focus on this. You know, but I guess it's the same thing. I've had a lot of people tell me I should try it, but
it's worth it. I mean, and the thing is, I've been doing it for like a year now. I had my like 17-year-old cousin show me how to use it. I was like, come over, like we're gonna sit down, we're gonna figure out TikTok, and she was like so excited to do it, and she just showed me the basics, and I was like, okay, and then I started doing it, and like. At first it sucks because like you're not getting any views.
Yeah.
But then like the more you use the app and you kind of understand how it works, and it's just like I had something blow up and get 1 million views, and I was like, I never would have got that on Instagram.
Yeah, that's
ever.
amazing. And it seems like
how long was your lead in to getting to that point?
Yeah.
How long were you on it?
About a year.
Wow.
That's impressive.
And I wasn't posting too consistently, but after I got the 1 million views, TikTok went, oh, okay, we'll start feeding you to more people. And so after I started getting more views on every video, it was so much easier to make content because there was like more of a reward.
Yeah.
Like my brain was like, oh, okay, like I'm going to post this and it'll actually get to an audience.
Do you think that's probably really the main platform
the hardest
right now?
thing, well, I think TikTok is definitely the main platform as far as growing an audience.
Yeah.
I honestly think that if you're established, you don't need to be on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's for people like us. It's for people who need to find their audience. And the thing with Instagram is, you know as well as I do how hard it is to grow it.
The algorithm makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It doesn't. I mean, Reels are great. And if you're going to start anywhere, you should start with Reels because Reels are doing better for me than even my TikTok.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, it's just a matter of just putting the content out there. I recycle content too. So I'll take videos that I've done like a few months ago and put it back out. That way you don't get burned out constantly making content. You just want to constantly, every day be posting something.
It's the idea, I think, really that you have to do that, and it seems exhausting to me.
It is exhausting,
It seems exhausting.
Honestly.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I mean, there's no lie about that. As far as playing the guitar goes, so are we going to do that without cuts? Or am I just going to pull it out and just kind of play?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
I just wanted to make sure so that it's like fully tuned and everything. It wasn't going to be like, okay, pause, she'll get out her guitar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and tune that up.
For sure, yeah.
Like
Right on.
ready to roll. Right now I have it in like this crazy drop tuning, so I was doing this Nirvana cover.
What were you playing on the cover?
Something in the Way. Yeah.
I could tell when you started.
It was like just the two chords, the whole song. Yeah, we did a cover to that. It was pretty sweet.
That was,
New Batman.
yeah, like, New Batman, not bad. That was the biggest perk for me, was that song being popular again.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I don't know, I really liked the New Batman.
I liked it. I just, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny how, like, unmuscular he was, and then he put on the Batman suit.
Yeah.
And he was, like, shredded. I was like, ooh, that's a little cringe. Like, that was the only part of the movie
That's not really your muscle.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? Like, you guys just didn't care at all about that.
I thought it was a really cool movie. I just, it didn't play like a superhero movie to me. It was more like a crime,
I agree.
drama,
Yeah.
which I like those kind of movies a lot. But, you know, I'm still, you know, like, ride or die for Michael Keaton Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That was my,
for
because
sure.
I was like a little kid when it came out, and it was, it just, you know, the nostalgic factor, I think. It's just a really great movie.
It was my first big introduction to Batman, and it was like...
Well, I had always watched the reruns of the Adam West Batman, right?
Yeah.
And those were fun when you're a little kid, the bam, pow, and all that. But then this Batman comes out with, you know, the gangster, mafioso Joker, right?
Yeah.
Which is played different than any other Joker, which is, you know, Heath Ledger's great, but so is the Jack Nicholson. You know what I mean? I think those are both...
It's very theatrical, and I really like that aspect of it. It's very,
yeah. You have like Jack Palance as the mob boss, right? And then, you know, it's a great movie. So, you know, the second one was really dark for me when I was a kid. I mean, I didn't appreciate it that much. Looking back now, as an adult, Batman Returns is a masterpiece. And it's a Christmas movie. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie. Yeah. My wife doesn't like it because she finds the Penguin unpleasant, and I'm like, well, yeah.
He's very unpleasant.
He's unpleasant.
That's
the idea.
I had read that
the part where he eats the fish.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
I had read that they had a partnership with McDonald's, and McDonald's was really pissed off at the movie because it wasn't kid friendly for them to put the toys in their Happy Meals, with the penguin being the main issue. It's just gross.
Yeah.
Great penguin though. It was a great penguin.
Super great penguin.
Yeah.
And Danny DeVito. I mean.
You know, I just watched a movie last night, The Comedian, with Robert De Niro and Danny DeVito. It's like 5 years old.
Huh.
Yeah, not the. I told my brother, I was like, oh yeah, that's old. And he's like, no, not the king of comedy. Comedian.
Huh. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. It's good. I check it out. It's got Harvey Keitel in it. It's like an aging insult comic in New York. You know what I mean? Like, what do you, like, you know, how trying to... Danny DeVito plays his brother. It's really fun.
Yeah. Huh.
What did you
do with the Nirvana cover? Where did you play that at?
So...
Was it the live stream?
We put that in our set. So the crazy thing is when I went out on this run, I could only bring one other band member. But I didn't want to do, like, a solo thing, because those just don't go over as well. People don't take you, you know, like, I can do the solo thing, but having, like, the full band appeal is much more interesting. So I took out, we just added him to the band. He's part of my solo project, but he does, like, keys and pads and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So what I did is... I took my reimagined stuff, which is like the more electronic stuff, had him feed the tracks, and then I sang over top of it. And then for that song, we like had just an entire backing track to it where it's like strings and like crazy noises. It sounds a lot like the one that they did for the movie. And it sounded great. It sounded huge. But yeah, we just kind of went out as like a duo.
You did these for the live shows as well as the live stream?
Yeah, both. Yeah. And it's basically like I feel like I'm running two different bands. But right now, like my guys, one of them just had a baby. And he's our drummer. So he's like the one we need. And like, because I can put bass and guitar and backing tracks if I have to, but live drums, like you gotta have live drums
for sure.
So right now we're just looking for like a touring drummer.
Is he gonna come back into the band? Just taking a little bit of time away?
He's not leaving the band,
because I've heard from a lot of musicians that babies kill rock and roll.
They used to.
Yeah, but
the thing is like, because music has become so modernized, you have your studio guys and you have your touring guys. Mm-hmm. And he is not going anywhere as far as like creating the music is concerned. And because he's a core member, he gets to pick and choose what shows he wants to be a part of. Oh, cool. Like he has, you know, that say over anybody else that we hire. But we have to keep moving.
Sure.
I can't not be booking shows. And he is completely respectful of that. There's no ego with him. That's what I love. It's just like, he cares about serving the song, serving the music. He will not leave the studio environment But as far as like going on these long runs, it's like, first of all, he's got 2 mouths to feed, and he's got, you know, his job and everything else. And like, there was a long time where I was like, when are the guys going to be able to quit their jobs? And it finally occurred to me, like, maybe never. Like,
Yeah.
But there are so many, you know, young musicians out there who just want to get on the road. And it's like, you know, I can take them out. I can show them, like, hey, this is, like, how banding works, you know? This is how you do it. And, you know, I'm not worried about it anymore.
Is that ever difficult to navigate in the sense that somebody that you take out on the road wants a bigger piece of the band, a bigger part?
You know, we haven't done it long enough for me to really figure that out.
Yeah.
But most of the time when you have these like touring drummers, they don't necessarily want to be tied down.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They want the road life.
Yeah.
They don't want, oh, you're going to go make an album? I'm going to go on tour with this other band.
Right.
I'll be back when you need me on the road. You know, like that's usually the vibe. And like, if you're not writing music with somebody, I usually doesn't. It can become that, but I think that I've never experienced that. We've had one fill-in drummer so far, and he's always been our guy.
Cool.
He just landed a great job, too. You know, everyone's grown up in my realm, so that's why I was like, where are those kids? Like, where are they?
So how often, like, have you went out on the road? How often do you want to be out on the road?
So, with COVID, it, like, halted everything. And I wasn't able to go out, and I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about creating music. And just in I would say the last 6-ish months, I'm like, okay, I think we're clear. I think our shows are not going to be canceled. Because even, like, 2 years into COVID, I was still having stuff ripped out from beneath me. Like, COVID numbers are rising. My stuff, and, like, I would invest time and money into these things, and they were going away. So I just stopped. I was like, guys, I can't book out of Columbus. I can take a hit in my hometown, like, oh, it got canceled. We were going to drive 10 minutes to it. Sure. When it's, you know, we're going to be driving 10 hours to it, I'm like, we got to wait.
Was this primarily the venues that were canceling these, or the other bands you're performing with?
It was the venues, and it wasn't their fault. You know, I mean, I think back to like a year ago when venues were pretty much getting outed for having shows. Yeah. I remember Natalie's had like, they were getting like reamed. People were like, I can't believe you're having shows right now. I remember someone putting a list of all the bands who were playing Natalie's shows. So then Natalie's goes, okay, we're going to require vax. I hear you, public. We're going to require vaccines for everyone. They had a picket line. No vaccine. I'm like, these guys can't catch a break.
What do you want them to do?
These guys, I mean, we literally played, I probably would not have booked Natalie's had it not been for me looking at them going, you guys are single-handedly trying to hold up the local music scene right now. I'm going to play a show there.
Yeah.
Like, we had just played a sold-out show at Scully's. I think it was like 2 weeks before we played the Natalie show, but I was like, screw it. Like, we're keeping that one. Like, we need to play. Because I was just like, they did so much, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's been tough to navigate.
It really has. And they're somebody that, you know, I'm a big fan of for what they've tried to do.
Yeah.
You know, and tried to keep it alive, to your point.
Absolutely.
So, but like moving forward, how often do you want to be out, you know, on the road now that things, I don't know if they're settling down or what's going on with COVID, who knows, but.
The thing is a lot of my touring connections were completely blisserated because of COVID. Because the venues shut down. The promoters backed out. And so right now what I'm trying to do is go into those cities and go, who here books the shows? Who here is trying to go on the road? And build up my network again so I can create like better runs. Right now I'm kind of like humbling myself and moving to square one just to get myself back out there. I did the same thing in Columbus after live shows came back. I said, I'll book whatever. And
meaning what exactly? Like
venue
size,
like venue size, like there was a lot of stuff that I was booking right after COVID that I never would have taken had COVID not happened. And it was because I was like, the whole scene has just been turned on its head. And people who are going to try to be doing this like the same as it was, I didn't know where my fan base was at. Yeah. I didn't know where live music was at. I didn't know who was going to be going to these shows. I mean, I couldn't be like, I'm going to hold out for the 2 times a year that I actually play, and my whole fan base is going to come out. I didn't know what that was going to look like. Okay. I had no idea what that was going to look like. So I was like, anytime someone would be like, hey, we want to book you for this, I wouldn't take my whole band out.
Yeah.
But I would play it. And I would go, and I would meet the people, and I would see what was going on. Like, and it was like, I just needed to create, like, see what was happening. Because, I mean, as far as the venues went, as soon as COVID ended and the venues opened back up, every band that had ever toured went back on the road. So all of the venues, if you weren't thinking, basically if you weren't risking like pretty much 6 months prior to open, you weren't going to get a show for 2 years.
And it was such a gamble too.
It was such a gamble.
You had to put so much into it. Yeah.
Right. Like, there were so many bands that paid booking agents and paid TMs to go out on the road, and their entire thing got canceled. Yeah. Either prior to them going out on the road, or somebody on the crew got COVID. I mean, it was scary. Yeah. I mean, and if you didn't know, like, if you're trying to run stuff like you were pre-COVID, there was no way. I mean, I was just kind of like, I'm going to put myself on the line and just go out there and do what I can. But I wasn't relying on the guys to do it. Like one of the guys had just had a baby. He couldn't be exposing himself, you know?
Sure.
He had a newborn.
I mean, at the time, you know, you're around a baby or the elderly or the high risk.
Exactly.
You have to shut everything down.
I mean, it's like, you know, you want to keep following your dreams, but at what cost?
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, okay, just going to go for it.
So when you say that you sometimes went out on your own, did you already have... Because I know you have like a solo project as well. Mm-hmm. Was that born out of that, or was that already in existence at that point?
So it wasn't born out of that. What happened is during COVID, we put out the Reimagined album. So that's like the electronic, like high energy kind of stuff. And basically what that was is it was a studio project. I never thought it would live on stage. I was like, this is just fun. Yeah. This is just something we can just chill out in, like a weird little project. And I wanted to keep Dear Demons alive because we had just put that out, but then COVID hit, so we couldn't tour with it. So
it was like 2019?
2019, right. And I was like, this is it. This is the thing that is going to break us through. You'd think that with every album. But it was, for me, it was like I had put everything into this. This is when I opened up about my story. This is when I, you know, had finally... Like, my dad was finally in prison. I was like, this is the time that I'm going to share everything. I made a documentary over, like, making it. All of those plans got canceled. Yeah. I ended up doing the release show for the Dear Demons Reimagined at a drive-in because I couldn't have a real show.
I remember a couple bands that I followed did things similar to that. I thought that was kind of a cool way to pivot.
It was crazy, and I set that show up in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I did it at the North High Brewing facility. Yeah. They gave me their parking lot. And yeah, I did it with this guy named Joey Hendrickson. He set up an entire stage for us. And then I even got to show the documentary on a screen. We did like a movie afterwards. Oh, wow. And then I showed my movie, and then we played The Princess Bride. Yep. And tickets were really high. I was terrified. Tickets to this were upwards of $70 for a car. So you can bring all your friends, but your car's going to cost $70. Yeah. I'm like, no one's going to go for this.
Did you set that, or did the promoter?
The promoter did that. So that's because he had a profit.
You were a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, $70 a ticket.
Yeah.
And we've done VIP stuff before, and it always blows me away. It does pretty well, but like, I was like sweating bullets. I was like, oh gosh, we have 2 weeks to put this together. Yeah. But as soon as it went on Eventbrite, people were like, oh, sweet, something to do.
Right.
But the thing was the people who were there were not our fans. Like, they were just people who wanted something to do. So I'm showing this freaking movie about, like, my dad going to prison, my depression, and these people are like, who the hell is this chick?
I thought we were seeing The Princess Bride. Yeah. What's going on?
I paid $70 for this. I mean, everyone was, I mean, we made a lot of new fans that day. Because, like, obviously I did, like, an hour of music beforehand. I was my opener. And I closed the show. I was the only person on the bill because I was like, I need to make money.
Yeah.
If I bring another band here, I'm going to have to pay them. Okay, I'll do both sets. So I opened it with my acoustic act, and then I closed it. So I did like 2 hours worth of music.
That's awesome.
But it was sweet. We had like a drone that like went through and like showed like a sky view of like all the cars and like the performance. I mean, it was a full production And I was actually in Florida when we set it all up. I wasn't even in Columbus. I just got a call and he was like, do you want to do a driving show? I was like, yeah. He's like, in 2 weeks? I was like, no, no. And he was like, that's the only time we have to jump on this now. It's like, that was COVID though.
Yeah.
That was like, if you're gonna be in this, then you have to be in it. Like, you have to just say yes.
Taking the opportunity that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about like sharing your story and, some of your experiences that have impacted your music. Do you, I guess with the debut EP and then the full length that came out earlier this year, both are kind of, autobiographical in a sense? You know?
In a sense, yeah. I would say Dear Demons more so. I would say that the album Into Static is more like, it's more my journey after Dear Demons. So it's more centered around like my personal struggle, whereas Dear Demons is more introspective and it's telling a story about my past more so than where I'm at right now. So most of the album Into Static is about like current time, how I'm managing now, whereas Dear Demons is more so telling the story of that little girl who never got to tell her story and how that affected like living and being and everything else. So that's like the only difference. They're both telling a story, but I would say Dear Demons is a little bit more literal, as opposed to the album is a little bit more like, when I wrote Dear Demons, I felt like, I had the mission of the world on my back. I like really made sure that I was like going in depth and like telling the story, whereas like Into Static is like, okay, I did it. Let's just write music now. Let's just kind of feel these emotions and kind of play them out. And a lot of the songs are just about dealing with substance abuse as it regards to PTSD and depression. But like in Dear Demons, I talk about like, hey, this is a little girl who was trapped inside of a house. Here's people who heard the yelling and screaming at night and never did anything. Like, that was the story being told in Dear Demons. And, like, Into Static is a little bit more, like, I don't want to say lighthearted, because most of the things I talk about are very heavy. But they were more, like, specific to that story.
Do you find that writing about your experiences is something that's really therapeutic and beneficial for you to kind of get that out there, or is it a difficult is it a difficult task to put that out there?
I would say it used to, like, the thing with like recovering from any sort of trauma is the good things happen after the hard things, right? So when you hear people, a lot of times, like when I would hear people tell their story like on a TED Talk or something, I'd be like, oh, sharing is what got them better. Like, yes, but it's also the hardest part. So when I first started sharing my story, I needed to find a group of people who could hear me that wasn't public. Because, like, learning how to share your story is really difficult. Anybody that's dealing with PTSD or trauma, like, as soon as you start telling that story, you have to find somebody that's, like, really going to be able to hear you. And then being able to do it publicly, now you have to learn how to do it again and again and again and again. And you get to a point where it's not traumatizing as much anymore. And I've had so much healing by sharing my story. But at the same time, I always like to preface that with, like, sharing the story is not necessarily going to get you healed. You hear a lot of people say, like, trauma dumping. So, like, somebody who goes to the bar and gets drunk and then they tell all their problems and they go home, they're not going to be feeling better about that. Yeah. Like, you have to find somebody that can, like, really hear you and talk, like, bring your trauma and make it real. That's where the healing happens. Does it feel good? No. And, like, the first couple times that I shared my story, I remember I went on a podcast, the What You Don't Hear podcast with, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, Ross Steinstein, and I remember I got in the car after I did that, and I shared so many details, and I just like, it just felt like I got hit by a bus. I was like, oh my gosh, this was so hard, but I'm so glad I did it. This is the reason that I'm here.
Sure.
But it was so hard, and, you know, it was one of those things I built up in my head so much. I knew when I was going through it, I wanted to share my story, and then I did it, and it was hard. But then it was like the reality of like, you have to do it again and again and again, and like, that's when it gets easier. That's when the healing happens. But it happens over time, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So you say at first you needed to share with someone that wasn't public. Was that your inner circle?
So
people that was it easier in the beginning to talk to people that you did know?
So the hardest thing is understanding that my family was not going to be the people that were going to help me out of this. The conversations that I had, so my mom and my sister were the only ones who really knew what was going on. And they were all dealing with it in their own way. You know, we were at different parts of our journey. They really didn't want to go public with it. They wanted, like, he was locked up. We can move on with our lives. We're good.
So this is something that your relationship with your father affected all of you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
we were in the house. So I was 10 when my mom left, but they had shared custody. And the confusing thing about like trauma and all of those things is when it's your own family, the things that are normalized just stack. So a bad thing and a worse thing happens. All of a sudden, this bad thing is normal. This worst thing, we're a little skeptical of this. But this bad thing has now become normalized. You keep stacking those things. People from the outside look at your situation in retrospect. They go, how could you let your, daughter continue to see him? What they don't understand is that things that happen within a family unit, things become normalized that aren't normal. Mm-hmm. And especially,
it's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, when it becomes like, especially when things are not brought to the light as far as abuse. You don't go to a family function and be like, hey, like, this is happening to me at home. It's all quiet. It's hush hush. And because it wasn't being brought to the light, there was no help. There was no outside perspective that could really, get us out of it. So I continued to see my dad up until I was about 18 years old is when, I was like, I'm really going to limit how much I see him. Just because I had kind of got over the childhood abuse, I kind of like disconnected from it. And then I moved on, and he became a much darker person in a different way. I almost didn't recognize him. And so I stopped seeing him. So when I would only see him like a couple times a month, and then when his charges came out, I was just like, that gut feeling that I had was right. And of course, then here's the story. Here's everything we're talking about. Then I actually was able to talk about my abuse and what had happened to me and all of these things. But, it's just the tip of the iceberg, really. And I think the craziest part of that was those last couple of years where my mom and my sister had not really talked to him anymore. That's when a lot of being re-traumatized happened, because it was like sitting in the room with like a villain. And it's funny because Dear Demons talks about like a lot of those moments where you feel crazy, because the things that were normal to him, weren't normal to me. And you're dealing with, I even struggle to use the word narcissist, because people graduate from narcissism. They move on to worse things.
Yeah. And
when I would sit in the room with him, the feeling and the feelings of like being uncomfortable, when you sit in a room with somebody and you're like, something's a little off.
This doesn't feel right.
This doesn't feel right. Whether it's something they said, kind of the way that they act, it was like all of those things, and it was almost like supernatural. The last time that I saw him, there was like a look in his eye, and that was like one of the hardest things for me to like graduate from, that fear, I like had trouble getting to sleep at night, and it like stuck with me. And Dear Demons talks about that because I felt like, truly, I felt these tangible demons within me. Like when I saw him like that, there was like something that stuck on me. I couldn't get to sleep at night. I was paranoid. Like any little noise at night would trigger me. And I was just, and it was funny because I had dealt with such intense abuse as a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And here I am just sitting in a room having a conversation with someone, and it's scarier. And you can't explain that to somebody who doesn't work with people of that nature. And I mean, that's why I love music so much, because like they don't have to understand, you know, everybody has their demons. Like we've all been through something. My situation is a little unique in its nature, but at the same time, because that happened to me and because it was so intense, I'm the one out here ringing the bell going, wake up, like bad things happen and let's talk about them, and like let's talk about our trauma, let's talk about these experiences, because it was so intense and so real for me that I want other people to be able to have a platform so they feel comfortable to talk. Because one of the things I can't stand is people who just like brush it all off, you know, because that's where I was for years of my life, and that really messed me up. And if anybody gets anything from my music, it's that they feel like they're valid in their experience.
Do you have people that come to you and get something from your music, maybe that relates to their own experiences? You know, and that helps them?
I've had it less about the lyrics and more about stuff like this.
Gotcha.
More like, hey, I listened to that podcast. Hey, I read that interview. And then all of a sudden they're telling me, like, my dad was in prison. I was abused at a young age. Oh my gosh, like, I've never told anyone that. And I realized it's, like, my music is awesome. But that's my platform to be able to have these conversations. Like, the music is the effect of what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily people who are like, hey, that lyric, that really spoke to me. Because
maybe they don't quite understand.
It's also the cryptic way that I write. Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking like this in my music.
This is very direct to the point.
Yeah, this is it. And I thought that the music was enough, and, you know, I had the realization of, like, these conversations need to be had. It's not enough to just have the cryptic lyrics. Yeah. It's the conversation. And, you know, it took me a long time to get past the fact that I was like, you know, oh my gosh, are people thinking I'm just on my soapbox? I can't get over it. Like, I want attention. And it was when people finally started reaching out to me going, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no time frame.
No, not
and nobody
can
set that for another person.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And it was, you know, obviously my heart of hearts, like, I really care about, like, young girls, because that's who I was when I experienced a lot of these things. But I've had a lot of guys reach out to me, because usually abuse happens a lot with young boys and their fathers. Yeah. So I've gotten a lot of people reach out to me that are men who have dealt with, you know, that, and there's a lot more stigmatism for them because they're the guy, you know, like, oh, your dad is just, you know, toughening you up, and here they are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're still dealing with that pain, and it's shaped who they are, and no one wants to talk about it. And here I am, and, you know, my someone reaching out to my band, and now we're talking about it because no one else does. So, I mean, it's really, that kind of stuff is really solidified. I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep having these conversations.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I appreciate you so much for sharing your story
absolutely.
Today. You know, to your point, just destigmatizing the idea and the thought process of talking about this kind of stuff, being vulnerable in such a public way, and you know, normalizing that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, that's like the bigger conversation, right? Yeah. Is like, my conversation is like abuse, and is about these people in the world who are like super villains. They're actually real. But like, the real conversation is just like we're all suffering. And, like, what a crazy time to, like, actually start having this conversation on COVID. Like, now everybody gets trauma. We've all been traumatized. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I don't understand that kind of suffering. Yeah. We all lost someone. You know, we all have now experienced what it is to be, like, stuck in your head. And, I mean, as crappy as that is, it's like, I feel like this conversation is more important than ever, because it's like, you know, we have to start talking about it, because it's not just a small majority of us who are dealing with this. We're all dealing with being traumatized. We're all dealing with anxiety. Like, we all know what that's like now. Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, throughout the various things that can happen to someone through their life, COVID, to your point, right, has affected so many people in so many ways. And there's people really that maybe didn't realize they had anxiety or depression, right, because of that, not being able to connect with their friends or family. Maybe they wouldn't have. Yeah. You know, maybe. Yeah. That's the crazy thing is, you know, there's a lot of people who struggle with depression and anxiety, and that can be triggered by mental chemical imbalances. That can also be, you know, triggered by actual events that happen. And they're two different things, but they're similar experiences. And because of COVID, we have a lot of people who are falling in that category of, I wasn't these things. There's nothing wrong in my head, but oh my gosh, am I anxious now? You know? Absolutely. You know, it's crazy. So aside from, you know, the music and being able to talk in interviews and podcasts, which I'm sure are huge for you to be able to do that, do you have anything else in your life that you find helps you heal or continues that process for you? For sure. So during this whole thing, I had like a coming to Jesus moment, and we call them small groups. So basically it's like a group of people that get together every week, and you talk about the Bible and you pray for each other. And, you know, people who aren't of faith, I would just say find a support group, because those are the people who got me out of this. You know, my family was there to keep me alive and to support me as much as they could. But having people who weren't as close to it listen and empathize and be able to offer, you know, support, like, that is how I got past it. So a lot of times, especially with like abuse, it's really great to find other people who have experienced abuse and be able to talk about it. I was lucky enough, one of the girls in my small group, she was very open about her experience. And we kind of went on that journey together, and it really helped me. And anybody that is experiencing that, I mean, I truly think that, like, there's power in numbers, and just finding an outside group that you can kind of not worry about stepping on toes. So, like, if I'm sharing all this stuff with my family, they're going to have their own emotional response, you know, whereas if I'm sharing this with people who are kind of outside, they can just be there for me. They're not getting re-traumatized. The problem was, when I was sharing my trauma with my family, they were getting re-traumatized. Yeah, they didn't want to keep living that over again and again. But I shared with somebody who was outside the situation, and they could really offer up, like, insight and just listen and, you know, just be that person that was, you know, kind of like, it's okay and I hear you, as opposed to, oh my gosh, like, every time I would talk to my family about it, like my mom and my sister, it was like they were trying to reconcile with their own pain. And I didn't want to do that to them anymore. So, yeah, finding people who are outside of your circle, and that's not easy to do, you know? No, it's not. You know, when I actually researched, like, hey, where are some support groups for this? And the lack of it was just terrifying. Was it intentional that you found something that was faith-based, or did that just sort of happen organically? So, as far as, like, I had not been involved in, like, a like, home church since I left my last church. So I was involved in Xenos, and I dealt with a lot of, like, hurt from that church. They were very controlling. They, you know, anybody who's been a part of Xenos has probably experienced or heard somebody else experience similar things. So I did not want to get too deep involved with church, because I'd been hurt myself. Mm-hmm. But what had happened is I was in so much pain with my dad, and I became so raw. And one day I went up for an altar call, and this woman was praying over me, and she just looked at me, and she was like, one of the things my old church told me was that I shouldn't pursue music because they didn't play music in their church, which is super, I mean, that is crazy to begin with, as linked as,
Yeah, right?
I
would have been like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, what is happening?
Not for me.
There's no worship? What? But that was something I experienced.
Yeah.
They told me, and I kind of believed it. I thought I was doing the wrong thing by pursuing music, even though I knew in my heart of hearts, like, keep pushing. That's not real. But I went up one day because I was just so sad. I was so sad. I think this was, like, right when my dad got convicted, and I was just like, screw it, I need help, Like, people aren't helping, I need God's help. So this woman prayed over me, and I told her very little of my story. I said, my dad just went to prison. I'm pursuing music. I'm just kind of stuck. And she was like, okay, let me pray for you. And she was just like, she kept saying, like, don't let anybody tell you that this is not what you're supposed to do. And that was the one thing that I was afraid of joining, like, getting involved in the church about. And that was the one thing that she was like, no, don't let anyone say that. So it was that day that I, researched, and I found a small group, and I went that Sunday. And I went out, and
that's amazing.
I've been with them for 3 years, and it was one of those, like, divine intervention things where, like, it's definitely, like, it's not going to be everyone's story. I had a lot of problems with the church for a long time. I was, a lot of bad things were said to me that should not have been said. But the one thing is, like, people are not God. And, the faster you can figure that out, the easier your faith walk's going to be. And people are doing the best that they could.
Yeah, that's the truth.
With what they understood.
I can really appreciate where you're coming from with that. My faith is very important to me, and I have struggled finding a church over the years that I felt was open and accepting and loving of everyone as I believe they should be.
Yeah, so like Jesus is.
Like Jesus is.
Why is this so hard to find?
Like Jesus is. And so I don't really have a church that I go to, but I pray.
Right.
My faith is important to me. I wear a cross necklace. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really cool that you've kind of navigated through that and found something and are open about it and stuff. Yeah. Is that difficult to navigate in the world of being in a band?
It's funny. When I was like, okay, I am a faith-based person, I'm going to talk about it, I was terrified. I was like, man, I don't know. But the thing with music is people are so accepting.
Yeah.
Like, people who don't believe is like, no one's... I've dealt with very little people who have ever been like, oh my gosh, you're talking about your faith? It's like, I'm vulnerable. Like, I'm going to talk about everything. I talk about my dad abusing me. I talk about my faith. This is who I am. And the thing with me is, like, there's another guy in my band, and he runs around with 666 on his shirt. He runs around with, like, pentagrams. And it's like, him and I have, like, the deepest and most loving conversations, and we both respect who we are and where we're at.
That's
and, like,
the thing, the respect, right?
The thing is like, if you have somebody who can respect you where you're at, I'm going to respect you where you're at. And, like, and if you don't, then just move on, Like, I just want to be as open and vulnerable as possible, because the reality is there's a heck of a lot more people out there who understand than what you realize. Yeah. And it takes a little bit of courage to go out there and say it. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm a Christian. That's who I am. Like, there's guys in my band who don't believe. And, like, that should show people that, like, hey, I'm not out here. I was abused by people of faith who use their faith to weaponize the church. I was that person. I dealt with that. I have dealt with the mental strain. I have dealt with the anxiety and depression, and I've dealt with a church who literally cut off everybody else in my life except for them. I realized this is not a healthy environment, and I left, and I had no one by my side anymore, because they said, oh, your friends who don't believe, like, you invite them to church, they say no, you cut them off. That's what I was told. Yeah. And I did it. I was a kid. I didn't know anything. And
that's kind of the problem that I have encountered. There's this stigma with being faith-based in this day and age that there's a reason that a lot of people have lost their way with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's a stigma with it that you are not accepting, and you do not believe in these certain things. So like, it's interesting because like that's not, like we said, that's not the way
not
Jesus, you know what I mean,
like,
did things.
The crazy thing is like people who talk about their experience with the church, you know, I've heard a lot of it because I've experienced a lot of it, you know, like it was non-accepting, judgmental. I mean, let's just say it, the crazy eyes, you know, people coming up to you and they give you that look and you're like, this is not good. And
if you don't do things this way,
you
are condemned to hell.
Yeah, like we're going to kick you out. You have to step down from this position, you know, whatever. And you shouldn't be doing that to people who are not even like, don't even have their faith yet, you know? But the reality is like when you read these stories, like, you know, look at Jesus. He talked to the woman at the well who, as a Jewish man, he wasn't even supposed to do that. You're not even supposed to talk to women, let alone a Samaritan. Yeah. And it's like, that's the whole reason that I got into this, is like, we're supposed to be spreading love and like destigmatize like, you know, cultural boundaries or, you know, these stereotypes. And like, that's love. Like, we're supposed to love. Can we figure that out? Yeah, and if we figure that out, then like, I'm on board. But if like you're here just trying to like, you know, basically make the faith to fit your culture, I'm out.
It can be like, very modern church can be very judgmental and very hypocritical. And
even worse is past church. I mean, they used to kill people.
That's true.
We sometimes forget we've actually come a long way.
It's gotten better. Still problematic.
I know, still problematic, but I think at least we're killing people less.
Fair point. Fair point. No, but I think that's really cool, and you know, you don't see a lot of that. People so open to talk about that and the struggles that come along with that. You know,
sure.
Especially in the world of music. Just like my involvement in music over the years, it's just I've gotten shit because like, you know, of my faith. You know, people are like, oh, and like, well, no, like that's not like. I believe in the way that I think that Jesus believes, not in the way that maybe the crazy eye person, the Bible thumper or whatever that's trying to tell you you're going to hell if you do this, don't do this, that, or the other. Yeah, the person
that like their entire faith is no gay people and no abortion.
Yes.
And that's my faith. It's like, that's a political stance.
Yes, like,
thank you. Why are we submitting our faith as a ballot? Like, love people. Love the woman who's out there getting an abortion. Love the homosexual. Love LGBTQ. Like, what are we doing?
And you know what else bothers me is, I think this is a cop-out when people say, oh, like, I love gay people. It's not my job to judge. By saying that, you're judging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a judgmental statement.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So like, why do you have to add that? You know, they're I could talk about this, go down this forever, but like, if somebody's born that way, God made them that way.
For sure.
Right? You know?
And some of my favorite preachers right now identify as homosexual. And there's this one, Jackie, I can't remember her last name, but the way that she talks about faith is just, I mean, she puts some of these like old dudes to shame. I mean, it is just unreal. And we're kicking these people out of the church. Like, let's actually figure out, like, they can teach us something. Like,
absolutely.
And I think when it comes to destigmatizing the church, I think that it starts with people who are living out their faith, who can call out when it's wrong. Because people do weaponize it, like you said. They do weaponize it.
All of the time. And they use it, and they mold it to fit their bias and bigotry. Yeah. Which is not what it should be.
Exactly. And the reality is a lot of people who I went to this super intense church with, you move into a house and you don't leave that house until you get married to somebody in the church. I mean, it's crazy what I was in. But, like, the people who left there no longer have any relationship with God. Yeah. And that's what I believe I'm out here to do, is to find those people again and go, that wasn't God. That wasn't God. And it's like, it's so sad when you have somebody like who is so devoted to the church and does everything right. I mean, there were people who moved into that house who didn't leave until they got married and were at church 5 times a week and had a curfew of 10 p.m. And then all of a sudden they realize, oh, I don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, these people are a little manipulative. Oh, I'm out with Faith. And it's like, God never, that's not what he requires.
Right.
That wasn't part of the stipulation. Like,
yeah, that's man's interpretation.
Yeah.
And direction of things, you know. It's
really
problematic.
That's really sad.
Well, I think we're winding down here.
Sweet.
And I'm looking forward to, you're going to play a couple songs for us.
For sure, yeah.
But I did want to ask you about one thing, just because it's a little bit, we'll end on a little bit of a lighter note here, but I noticed recently you did a cover of Running Up the Hill.
Yeah.
Is that a love of Kate Bush, a love of Stranger Things, both?
You know,
have you watched the newest season of Stranger Things?
I binged it, and like as soon as like the first block came out, I watched them all, and then the second block I watched them all, totally binged it. I love Stranger Things, and you know, I did it for that TikTok clout. I was like, this TikTok song is blowing up. Like, I need to get on that train.
It's a great song. I'm happy that it's back again.
One of my Patreons, Charles Goddard, he's like a huge Meg Myers fan, and she covered that.
That was great, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I gotta do it for Charles. Yeah. So there was like a whole combination of things that I wanted to do it for. But yeah, oh my gosh, the new Stranger
It was a great version of it.
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Her voice was tough to match.
No, you made it your own. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's what I always try to do that with covers.
I got you know the little pop vinyl figures.
Oh yeah.
I recently got a Dustin one with the Hellfire Club shirt on.
Oh, that's so
Hellfire
sweet.
Club and the what's his hat say? I don't know, like bite me or something.
Yeah.
I forget what it says.
I got the Hellfires Club shirt, and I ordered it
awesome.
like an idiot off of Instagram, and it came in, and it was like the most disgusting material, and like it was way too small, but I still wore it.
Yeah, why not? Like, it's a cool shirt.
Screw it. Yeah, it's funny.
No, I just wanted the compliment you on that, because I thought that was super fun.
You.
And I wanted to know where it was born out of. So
I did that cover from Stranger Things, and then I jumped on the Batman cover, and like we were talking about earlier. So I'm just taking like whatever is like in pop culture right now and doing covers.
It's a cool idea, you know what I mean? It's always fun to kind of, you know, like pepper in some popular covers. I know whenever I go see a band or a musician, like obviously I want to hear their material,
right?
But it's always a fun little surprise when they cover a song that I know and love, you know?
Exactly.
So that's really cool.
Yeah, my taste in music is like, it can get pretty eclectic. So like if I was doing like the covers of like songs that I'm feeling, no one else would feel it. So I'm like, let's pick something that I know everyone else is into.
Doing it for them. Maybe one for you, two for the fans.
Like, I do my music, and like that's obviously what feeds me. Like when I do a cover, I want to do it for everybody else. You know? I don't really like doing cover songs. So when you work
so hard on your own material that you want to put the focus on that for sure.
Plus, I mean, those 2 songs were really easy to learn. So
yeah, fair enough.
Nice bonus. The Nirvana song was 3 chords. So.
Yeah, it's everybody's first song was a Nirvana song. Right?
For sure.
So it's nice to come back to that, add it to the repertoire. Kenzie Coyne, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and truly thank you for opening up about your journey.
Album and where can people find you on social?
Oh yeah, okay. So my current album right here, Into Static, we dropped it at the top of the year. We're streaming everywhere, so we are on Spotify, Apple Music, literally everywhere. If you go on to any of our social media, we are at Hello Luna Band. So Hello Luna Band. And we got links in all of the bios. So like if you go to our Instagram, we'll have like a little link in bio thing. You click on that. You have the YouTube links, the streaming links, like everything will pop up. It'll be all right there. And we have a new single coming out, which is the title track of this album. And we reimagined it, as we do. And that's going to be coming out this fall. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be really cool.
Stay tuned for that, which is fall's coming up soon.
We're
almost there.
Yes, find me on TikTok. I post every day. That's going to be like where you find the funny content. Cause,
you're going to have to give me some TikTok pointers.
Yep, definitely going to do that.
Yeah. Awesome. So everybody, be sure to check out the new album and look out this fall for the new stuff coming. And you're going to play a couple songs for us?
Absolutely, yeah.
Beautiful. Super excited about that.
Yeah, and I didn't tell you which ones they were. You were like, "Don't tell me."
I
the
didn't want to
songs.
know.
I
wanted to be surprised.
Jesse, you can just stay right there.
Am I good here?
You're good.
Okay.
Am I good here? Should I move anywhere?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, let's see. Well, we were talking so much about Dear Demons, so I am gonna play Tongue Tied, which this song is like. This is about when I finally came out and was like, I'm gonna tell my story. So it seemed fitting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, funny thing about me is, so see these pegs on the guitar? Like, it counts the frets.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a marker on the 6th fret almost always, and it got rubbed off on tour. So now I have to count because that's how I keep my place. It's like dumb. Like everybody has their weird guitar tick. That's mine.
I love it.
Do you need a Sharpie?
Can you imagine if I just marked up my guitar? No way. I would. I probably should. Get like a little knife, make like a notch.
There you go.
Alright, here we go. Don't come any closer, I'm on fire with emotion, please. Don't try to console me, I'm one of the unruly. Don't you want to expose me, see why I'm out of control. I'm so tired of waiting, don't want my life pulsating. There's a war in my mind and it's fighting on both sides. Got a man-made of monsters that tear up my insides. Get real what you're fighting, it's no much to stand by. It's all for nothing, standing your tongue tied, how you tongue tied. I know the fear is fleeting, but this war rages in me. I think I've hit the ceiling. No time to keep on feeling. Chaos I hold within me will burn the cage to free me. Alive and fire breathing. Turn back and please forgive me. This war in my mind is fighting on both sides. Got a man-made of monsters that tear up my insides. Get real what you're fighting, it's
Lane. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I love that song.
Thank you. Yeah, that one's super fun to play with the whole band. It's real heavy. A lot of times, there's like such a stigma with being like a girl in music. And then like we come out and we play that song and they're like, "Oh, you do rock." And I'm like, yeah, I do.
Do you guys have your next show lined up in Columbus?
Yeah, we sure do. So it's actually this Friday.
Yeah.
Which isn't that common because we play Columbus like twice a year.
Yeah.
But we're going to be playing Rumba Cafe, and we're going to be playing with John Worthy. That's the guy we just did the run, the Nashville and Cincinnati, and this guy named Jake Summers. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love Rumba Cafe. That's like,
yeah, me too.
Some of our first shows were there, and they just upgraded the room so much. So it's such a sweet venue.
I think I'm off Friday night. I think I'm gonna.
You
it's still available.
totally should. Yeah, no,
right
let me know.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be a lot of fun. That one's gonna be really sweet. I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet,
like I said,
awesome. Yeah,
fun venue.
Yeah, it's a great venue. Seen a few shows there.
Yeah.
All right, we got one more, huh?
Yep. So I'm gonna tone it down a little bit. We've been super heavy. So this is the single.
Okay.
Off of the new album Into Static, first song that we dropped, and it's called Haywire.
This is getting a lot of airplay on 92.9
oh
right
my
now, right?
gosh, yeah, I love Randy and everybody there. They're so awesome. Yeah, they've been supporting. So I was actually an intern there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I got fired.
Even better.
I know. Because I was in high school, I didn't know anything. This is like, everyone had got an iPhone and I didn't, so I like couldn't keep a calendar.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was hilarious. But the 92.9 is literally crazy. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy and incredible. And I love them so much. I mean, they've created our fan base here in Columbus. If it weren't for them, we would not be where we're at. So
awesome.
Can't say enough good things. All right, this is Haywire. I gotta drink some water, hold on. And I gotta show off my super awesome cup. My weapon cup.
We've got Starbucks and Tim Hortons here. So.
I know, they're
Who
all
wants to be a sponsor?
represented. Yeah, come on, who's gonna get it first? Starbucks. Hey, I always go to Tim Hortons when I'm on the road. It's like impossible to find a freaking Starbucks in the South. Alright, let's go. I don't know why everything must go this slow when I take time to just escape and lose my eyes. So we all know the universe is overfull, so why can't I shoot myself into the sky while I can't decide? Just feel alive, and I'm too tired. Alive. just escape and close my eyes. So we all know the universe is a fool, so why can't I shoot myself into the sky? Why can't decide? It's real alive, and I'm too tired to get inspired. I'm too tired to get inspired. I'm too tired to get inspired.
Love that song.
Thank you.
Love that song.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome. Thank you, Kenzie, so much for being here. It was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, this was a
Yeah,
lot of
super
fun.
great.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show. This was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
Cool. All right.